A lot of people have always had this saying that, where's the Google from India? Where's the Meta from India? Where are the big ideas? Where are the big people? We are just followers. We come out with a cab app that was already there somewhere else. We come out with an e-commerce app which was already there somewhere else. We come out with all sorts of ideas that were all there somewhere else, right? What about our ideas? Are we doing anything at all that's original? Or are our VCs, like Ritesh, investing in moonshot ideas, ideas that are original, innovative, that can become really big? Are we? That is the point of our whole debate today. And I have for the motion T.N. Hari, who's chairman of Steer World. T.N. Hari is a top of the line executive who has taken 5 companies to great places, including selling off for great valuations. He now runs a company that invests and works through multiple areas, especially in material science, right? As well as certain other deep technology areas. We have Ritesh, who is against the motion. He believes that VCs do invest in moonshot ideas. Ritesh is a star investor himself, and he has invested in multiple companies. He has a huge portfolio. And let's see what they have to say. But before we start with the 2 gentlemen here, let me start with you. VCs in India don't invest in moonshot ideas. All who say yes, raise your hands. Those who agree. Wow, that's only about 10-15%. And they do invest in moonshot ideas. How many agree? That's more.
I guess we can end the debate now. We can take the next half an hour free.
Not bad. So that takes me back to where Kunal Bhel was saying yesterday, that when they started at that time, there was hardly anything, but now there are 1.5 lakh registered, startups, and there is a whole new world before them. There's Wi-Fi, there's 5G and all that, and there's so many people who have internet on their phones, and there is practically nothing that you cannot do. All right. So let us start. I will first invite our 2 speakers to give their opening comments. Don't reveal all your cards right now, just your opening thoughts. So we'll start with Hari, who's for the motion. Just to remind you all, the motion is VCs in India don't invest in moonshot ideas. Hari.
So the central argument of my opening remarks is that VCs in India have not been taking sufficient risk in investing in ideas or companies that can potentially change the game for the country or for the humanity at large. I think they've just been content investing in ideas and companies that merely tweak business models to deliver endless conveniences at your fingertips and your doorstep. I think, the VC world in India particularly has been abysmally lowering the standards of what it means to be even a tech company, or even what it means to be technology. Calling a company that, employs 100,000 underpaid, overworked gig workers to deliver Medhu Vada and toothpaste at your home as a food tech company is pretty shocking. When we hear of food tech, most sensible people would think of formulations of food, coming up with interesting formulations, nutritious stuff, coming up with, food that can help solve the anemia problems of the women in India or undernourished children in rural areas. But calling, a company that delivers food as a food tech company is pretty ridiculous and lowering the standards. And this is not just true in food tech, it's true everywhere. It's like calling a company that gives loans, to people that banks did not possibly give loans and considered subprime and not worthy of servicing, using an app to give them loans, and claiming that they have some amazing algorithms in which they can evaluate creditworthiness in a fraction of a second, I think is again lowering the standards. It doesn't stop at food tech and fintech. It goes on to property tech. It goes on to ed tech. We can go on and on. I think we need to raise the standards completely on this. And I think when it comes to food tech, calling companies that deliver food as food tech really is a cruel joke. It's an insult, and it's, in fact, I would think, actually, demeaning the problems that we really are facing, making a mockery of the real problems that the country is facing. And I'm not for a moment saying that we don't need to solve these problems. These problems certainly need to be solved. But today the debate is not whether that we need to solve those problems or not. The debate is whether VCs in India are investing in moonshot ideas or not. And investing in moonshot ideas does not mean burning endless capital in making contrived solutions and contrived problems seem real, or even chasing problems with imaginary, I would say, network effect. So this is my opening argument, and after the debate progresses, maybe I'll share some real examples, real stories, and build on this argument.
You look forward to the real examples. Cruel joke, food tech being called food. Ritesh, your opening comments.
So when I came for this debate, I was hoping for an Arnab Goswami kind of a debate, and Hari has...
You won't get that at Mint.
Hari has fired the opening salvo already, so I'm looking forward to it. So my central argument is that, my assertion is that Indian VCs not only fund moonshot ideas, but they take a disproportionate amount of risk in doing so, and end up losing more money than our peers in other geographies. And in support of this, I would like to present the following arguments. What is a moonshot game-changing idea depends on the needs of the market and the existing capabilities in an economy. The right measure of a big investment idea is impact. Economic impact, social impact, and cultural impact. And cool technology doesn't a moonshot idea make. I believe, and I will substantiate this shortly, that Indian VCs are investing in the highest impact ideas that they come across. We are also investing aggressively in deep technology areas, space tech, semiconductors, energy, robotics, biotech, all of the things that Hari did not mention in his opening remarks. Also, however, deep tech investments cannot happen in a vacuum. You need talent, you need patient capital, you need enabling policy provisions, you need a larger risk-taking ability in the entrepreneurs. You cannot get a baby in 1 month by getting 9 women pregnant. So it'll take time. We are on it, and we will continue to invest in moonshot ideas.
Thank you very much. Market impact does not necessarily mean moonshot ideas. No, Hari? So let us hear you. Can you bring in some data, some examples, and just elaborate on your position?
So let me just give you a real-life example. So I advise a growth stage VC fund. They were looking at investing in a fintech company. And what they told me that, why don't you just go out, meet the founders, the founding team, and figure out whether they're solving a real problem and whether they can build an organization and scale the business. So I met the founding team and the founders, and they had 2 amazing metrics, and which were really best in class in the industry. One was customer acquisition cost was extremely low, delinquency rate was very low. So I was very curious as to how come they were achieving these metrics. Every single conversation with every individual in the team, they were saying that we have a very strong analytics platform. We are able to evaluate the credit worthiness of the people who borrow from us, which makes it, the customer acquisition cost low and delinquency rates low. Didn't seem very convincing to me because I've always been suspicious of any of these, and I always dive a little deeper. So the head of analytics was talking about this. So I asked him, I understand statistics fairly well. It's a hobby of mine. In college, I studied that very well. So I asked him a lot of questions in terms of, just tell me more specifics in terms of what exactly do you do? How does the algorithm work? What are some of the parameters? How is it built? What's the logic? And do you even understand, for example, multivariate analysis? When I went down a little deep, I found he was completely out of his depths. He had no clue. And then when I talked to everybody else, everybody was just parroting this phrase. But nobody had an idea how the algorithms worked. I was still very curious as to how these guys are getting these 2 amazing metrics. And as I tried to understand this, the Kung Fu Panda moment happened to me, which is that I was looking for a magic recipe and there was no magic recipe. The only magic recipe was that every single team member were aligned on one amazing thing, and that is their target segment. The target segment to whom they were lending money was just below the credit worthiness of those the banks were lending. They were not chasing mindless growth. Everybody was convinced that that's the only target segment we have to attack. And they were not wanting to, in chasing growth, going below the target segment. So the clarity on the target segment and the fact that word of mouth would deliver growth was resulting in these two metrics. And then as I was walking away in the evening, I just was curious. So I asked them, why the hell did you keep telling me that it was analytics when the reality was that your target market was very carefully chosen and you executed well? The response was very interesting. Everybody, in one tone said, this is what the VCs love to hear. They love jargon, they don't understand anything, and hence that's what we tell everybody who comes. And we thought you represent a VC and we told you the same story, but you didn't seem to believe us. So this is a real example. And I just want to build on this a little bit, which is that, all VCs in India have been funding ideas with DACT, which is that they've been riding at the intersection of Aadhaar, broadband, and the smartphone. A recipe that has been created by Ambani, Nilekani, and Jobs. And using that intersection, they've been building on DACT, which is discoverability, accessibility, connectivity, and transactability. Every single startup is solving for this problem, which is you can discover your customers, you can access your customers, you can connect, you can make small transactions. Who is solving the problem of, India's, we are drowning in plastic waste, multi-layer plastic waste. Who is finding answers? How to dispose of this plastic waste, how to create sustainable materials. If you want to make in India, how do we create technologies that can give us an edge over China? We need advanced manufacturing technology. Who the hell is thinking of advanced manufacturing? Tech does not mean information technology. And tech does not mean the silly information technology. Even good technology is really good information technology. When I was in my early days of my career, the IT boom was taking off, which is the services boom. And at that point of time, the stock market somehow loved the word information technology. So every Tom, Dick, and Harry company was suffixing somehow information technology just to the names, just to boost the stock market. So every, segment in India today is using the word tech as a suffix. It's food tech, it's property tech. You want to buy and sell houses, it becomes property tech. Tomorrow Indigo Airlines, which uses some kind of an AI to service customers or develops an app for booking tickets, is an aviation tech company, not an airline company. If VCs were funding airlines, they would call them aviation tech companies. So I think, we just need to cut out the hype a little bit and create some real, tech companies, real moonshots. Otherwise, we'll just be spending time in these forums and we'll never be another China. We will be talking of, building wrappers and building services. This is what our aspiration is, which is, Narayan Murthy says, we should not build LLMs because they're expensive. We should build wrappers and services. That's how a person who's built reputation around providing low-cost services would think. Should we leave the future of India's tech to such people who build low-cost services to help us imagine what real technology is? So let me pause here.
VCs don't know anything. Sounded to me like a little unfair. I mean, even though I'm supposed to be an impartial moderator over here, but considering that you guys have really taken the startup ecosystem, maybe the person who spoke with you, Hari, was a little, too distraught over something. But okay, your counter arguments to what Hari has said.
So that was an impassioned speech, Hari. Thank you. I will pose a question to the audience. On the example that Hari gave, which was that of a lending company, a fintech, whether or not it's really tech. How many of you here believe that the biggest listed fintech company in India, Paytm, is a moonshot idea? Nobody thinks Paytm is a moonshot idea? I will give a story of my own to help demonstrate why it is a moonshot idea and why it delivers impact that is not to be scoffed at. So a few months ago, less than 6 months ago, I was in a very small tehsil town in Karnataka called Gundlupet. This is, literally the entire town is one street. And we had gone there to diligence a fintech company. And I went and spoke to one shopkeeper. In tiny Gundlupet in Karnataka, that shopkeeper was doing 70% of his revenue from UPI alone. He didn't call it UPI, he called it scanner. He said he does 70% of his monthly cash receipts via scanner. Obviously, it is companies like Paytm that are enabling the scanner. It is those guys who have printed the QR codes and stuck in front of his shop. But the impact on that person's well-being has been immeasurable. I think Hari scoffed at the fact that a segment that was previously impossible to lend to has become credit-worthy now. That, I think, is you are changing the life of that person. The cost of capital, when he needs to invest in inventory, how does he get the money? Any ideas? Before pre-Paytm, how did he get the money to invest in inventory? He borrowed from a local money lender at 3% a month, right? After Paytm, because now 70% of his income becomes documented, you can prove that he is actually getting that revenue in the shop, he becomes eligible for actual formal business loans. Guess what rate those loans are at? It's not 3% a month, it is less than 1% a month, compounded. That means that he has more money to deploy in his business. He has that money at a cheaper cost, and he's not at the mercy of a money lender who is really a loan shark who will attach his property if he doesn't pay back the loan. But this has this sticking of the QR code has other impact beyond creditworthiness. Think about tax compliance. 70% of his income is now in white. He's paying GST on that income. He's paying income tax to the government on that income. That has increased the government's indirect and direct tax collections both. Imagine what impact this has on his ability to invest. Pre-Paytm, where would this guy invest? If he has some extra cash, he would himself become a money lender, right? That is the only real way you had to invest, because all his income was in cash. And those are risky loans, those are risky investments. Now that guy has the ability to invest in mutual funds like you and me, right? Don't you think that is a massive impact? I think it is actually insulting to that shopkeeper to say that this is not a real innovation. That became possible because someone who's on a different bank, holding a different card, and holding a different app is able to transact with someone else who is on a totally different platform. That is what Paytm has done. And Paytm, in my mind, has been the moonshottest of moonshot ideas. Before I conclude, I'll give you just one more example from the same business, Paytm. Before Paytm came into being and before UPI in general came into being, how many of you here take app-based autos? Rapido, Uber Auto, Ola Auto, anyone? Lots of us take. The bill for an app-based auto on an average in India is about 80 rupees. This is actual data. Pre-UPI, how did you pay 80 rupees? You could not, because the cost of transaction on a Visa card itself, the minimum cost of transaction is about 40 rupees. So if 40 out of your 80 rupees was going in transaction costs alone, the business model of autos, the demand and supply matching that Rapido and Uber Auto and Ola Auto do, could not have succeeded without Paytm. Now, imagine the impact on all the auto drivers. Imagine the impact on us as consumers. That is real impact. That is not something to be scoffed at in my mind.
Right. So I'll ask you one question before I move to the next sort of segment of this debate, which is UPI, right? And the QR code, which is talking about. Would you call that a moonshot idea? Because that is something that it's not there anywhere else.
UPI is absolutely a moonshot idea, but it's not a VC moonshot idea. It's a digital public infrastructure that Nandan Nilekani dreamt of in his book, Reimagining India. It was made into a reality because the government of the day invited him to implement it on the ground, and everybody is riding on that and calling that a moonshot idea. Paytm is a moonshot idea? No way. UPI, absolutely yes.
All right. You have a counter to that? Or should we move to the next one?
All banks are on UPI. Let's have a show of hands. How many of you use your bank's UPI app? Your bank's
UPI app. Not PhonePe,
not PhonePe,
Paytm.
Google Pay, not independent UPI.
How many use
ICICI Bank,
HDFC
Bank, Axis Bank, those UPI apps. Maybe a handful, 10 or so people. How many of you use PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm? There's your answer. Whether it is
Google Pay is not a VC funded, India VC funded. We're talking of India VC funds.
Okay, let's rest the UPI debate for now. What I'm going to do next is to...
Absolutely.
Saving of time and the fact that I don't need to keep any paisa in my wallet, right? So, that is also there. So the next segment is going, I'm going to let these two gentlemen at their throats, which is, of course, not literally, but metaphorically, right? So they will ask each other some questions. Let's start with Hari. Your question to Ritesh, and then Ritesh will ask you a counter.
I mean, okay, I mean, in a debate you have a point of view, but it's not fair to ask the other person questions. But then I think you made it part of this format. So probably let me just ask you this question, Ritesh. Ritesh and I, by the way, have worked together in the past. We are good friends as well. So let me ask you, Ritesh, many of these, lending money, to the tier 3 people who had never had access to credit in the past, wonderful. I have no doubt about that. It's a good intervention. All I'm saying is that, they are not in the tech business. Calling it a fintech is, to me, very awkward because they are just a bank who's just lending to a different customer segment. And they're lending to a good new customer segment is all great. But saying that they have some amazing apps that can help them in a fraction of a second to figure out credit, all this is bullshit, So let's just be honest about what kind of a business you're building, and it's a good business to build. The question to you is, what are some of the biggest problems confronting India at this point of time? We have to become the next China. We need to become a manufacturing hub. We need to develop advanced manufacturing technologies. Otherwise, Make in India is never going to happen, right? We have climate-related problems, plastics disposal problems, sustainable materials. 50% of women in India suffer from anemia, but they can't take iron medications because iron medications in the current form are not bioavailable. How can we make bioavailable iron forms? So who is going to fund these ideas? Why are they not being funded? Why are we chasing, whatever has worked in the West? Why are we chasing those? If you claim that you're building for India, why are we not solving these problems?
I think it's a fundamental question that everybody sort of has in this country.
So I'll do the Arnab debate thing, Hari, which is that I will first answer the question that you did not ask, but respond to a statement that you made, and then I'll come to the question that you did ask. So I'll give you an example from our own portfolio. We have a company called Propelled. It is exactly the sort of company that you disdain, Hari. They are a lender. They are an education lender. They lend to students to pursue higher education. India is a unique country where neither, for the most part, the state doesn't fund higher education, and nor can you easily get a bank loan for higher education. And as a result, people who cannot afford to pay the high fees end up not going to college. It's usually not a problem that people in this room have, but you go literally just one level down in the economic strata, and this is a very real problem. Your child wants to do a BTech degree, but it costs 20 lakhs over 4 years. You don't have 20 lakhs, your child doesn't do the BTech, right? And you mentioned that a company like this is not a tech company. I would argue that it is very much a tech company, because there's a reason banks don't lend to that student. The reason banks don't lend to that student is they have no idea which of those students will actually get a job after their degree and which of those don't, right? Because there's no data. What Propel does is it collects data from all the alumni of the institute going back 20 years. And then it processes that data to make good assumptions on, or good predictions on, who is likely to get a job out of 100 students that enroll and who isn't, which institutes students actually get jobs, and which institute students don't get jobs. As a result, where previously 0 people were getting that loan, today about 70 out of the 100 people that enroll into those tier 2, tier 3 universities actually get the loans. That is life-changing. And that is not possible without technology. You can sit in a bank and believe that it is trivial. It is absolutely non-trivial. Because how do you even collect data at scale? So it is not about, yes, if I had an infinite number of people in the bank, I could go sit there and try to assess every application and assess whether each child is going to get a job or not. But it is impossible to do at scale without technology. Today, that company has more than 1,000 crores they give more than 1,000 crores of loans every year. And to me, that is pretty game-changing. It is absolutely technology and absolutely nothing to disdain. Now I'll come to the question that you did ask and try and answer that very, very in brief. So I think I don't think you can rank order the problems to solve in a very facile manner. You can't say that until all of hunger is solved in this country, we will not send satellites into space. Because otherwise we will only try to solve the basic problems and never actually graduate to solving the problems that matter to somebody else. Probably hunger is not a problem for all of us, but that doesn't mean that the problems we do have, our problems are related to education, related to jobs, related to loans, related to even credit cards. These are our real problems, and I don't think we can trivialize those problems because we don't have a good iron delivery vehicle in rural areas. So we absolutely need to solve those problems, but I have an objection against believing that there's a hierarchy of problems, that till we solve the iron problem, we should not even attack the fintech problem.
Your question now for Hari.
My question is, Hari, do you believe that Indian VCs are investing in areas that you consider game-changing deep tech? Let's take some examples from the broad areas that you gave, whether it is energy or robotics or space tech or semiconductors. Do you believe that Indian VCs are investing in those areas?
I'm not very sure, but my sense is that there is a beginning happening in this area as well. So space tech, for example, I can see VCs beginning to invest in some of these areas. But it's a early, I would say very early stage. And at this point of time, let me just say that one or two swallows don't make a summer. At this point of time, the big problems of India are being addressed more by corporations and companies rather than companies that are being funded by venture capital, which is really supposed to, invest in risky ideas. I can see, for example, Adani, Reliance focusing on biofuels. Biofuels is India's biggest thrust. We are so dependent on imported oil. The country is held to ransom because we are spending so much money on imported oil. We have to find an answer. Who is finding an answer? Not the VCs. It's some of these big companies that are doing groundbreaking research to figure out what are the ways in which we can convert agri-waste, not agro crops, into biofuels. So my view is that there is a beginning, but VCs don't naturally invest in moonshot ideas. For them, it's valuations, playing this game of valuations, chasing what has worked in the Western world, having a solid herd mentality on what works, what does not work, is still the investment thesis for them.
You have a counter to that?
I do. First of all, I'd like...
You shouldn't be in that profession.
Absolutely.
He will have a counter to that. And you also get a chance to counter his answer to your question.
Absolutely.
And we don't have much time, so keep them short.
Yeah. So just a quick comment on biofuels. I don't know if all of you know that most biofuels in India are not actually generated from waste. They are generated from actual sugarcane crops. And
not true at all. I understand the space deeply. So completely untrue. I understand the space absolutely deeply. I can spend an hour on it giving a speech.
The amount of ethanol in our fuel. Yeah, no, absolutely. Ethanol doping in our fuel is, I think, a direct subsidy to sugarcane farmers, which are a political vote bank. And but anyway, so, a lot, when we say biofuels, there's a lot that goes behind the scenes in biofuels. But I'd like to give some data. I actually got this data. There is Indian deep tech funding last year was $1.2 billion. In 2021, by comparison, that was $480 million. There has been a 3x increase in 3 years in Indian deep tech funding. I'll give some examples of...
Okay, make them quick. We don't have much time.
Yeah, very randomly. Agnikul is a rocket launching company, $61 million invested by Indian VCs. Pixel Space is a satellite constellation company, $100 million invested by Indian VCs. Log9 Materials is a battery technology company, $100 million invested. Grey Orange is a robotics company, $545 million invested. And lastly, I'll give a small example of a bioscience company, Bugworks, $43 million invested by Indian VCs.
Okay.
So I believe that where we see opportunity, we are investing.
Last counter from you.
I
You
really-
also run a lot of innovation within your organization, right?
Yes, but
tell us about
yeah. So my last and closing comment will be that I think we need to raise our ambition. We need to raise our imagination. You know, my belief is that a lot of the ideas that are currently being funded are not worthy of funding. There need not be a hierarchy of problems. We don't have to solve world hunger before we solve payments problem. I absolutely agree. But who is going to solve the important problems of this country? Who is going to invest in deep tech? While we think of creating services and wrappers because we don't want to invest in LLM, China walks away with DeepSeek. So I think we need to be far more ambitious. As a nation, as leaders, we need to get far better role models. Otherwise, the kind of people who are, you know, putting imagination in our minds are all substandard. We need to raise it significantly.
We are actually out of time, but since you raised your hand before the time up came, you can still ask a question, but it will be the only one. Who are you asking?
Mr. Hari.
You are asking Hari.
Yeah.
Who are you? Introduce yourself.
I am Ankit, I am a part of Deloitte. I have a fundamental query.
Yeah.
So why are VC investments considered to be riskier investments? Why do we, put all VC investment that they should be riskier investment? Aren't VCs supposed to secure their money first before investing, right?
Good question. Hari.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody should look at returns for their investments, but there are different categories of capital. A bank, for example, also wants to make money. A venture capital fund, a private equity fund, everybody wants to make money. But the strategy that each of them chooses to make money is different. A bank is far more conservative. They look for collateral. For example, a venture capital fund will invest by their nature, by the very definition of that concept, in more risky ventures. And that's how they have chosen to be.
Okay, you don't get to ask a follow-up question, but you obviously have an answer to that also.
Yes. Yes, I wish it was so. I wish our money were safe, but it is not. I'll give you some metrics. In the general startup ecosystem, about 98% of startups fail. Right? This is actual data that I have personally collected from 10 years of VC investing. 98% of all startups fail. Of all the VC invested startups, 80% of those startups still fail. Right? So we are putting our money behind companies where we lose money 80% of the times. I think that's pretty risky in my view. Right? I think if we took any more risk, anyway we are not making any money. We will, the capital flow will completely stop if we took more risk than 80% loss of capital.
Okay, before we start, with a bloodbath here on stage, we'll have to end this discussion. How many people now believe that VCs in India don't invest in moonshot ideas? Can we have a show of hands? Oh my God, it has gone up. The count has gone up. All right. And they invest in moonshot ideas? How many? That is still the majority, but thoda sa idhar udhar ho gaya hai. So the debate still, of course, has had an impact. Wonderful. I hope you both shake hands, become friends, and invest. You should invest in his companies, right? And thank you.